Fellas, today we're going to be talking about 8 tips that you need to know as a quarterback. So we're going to be going over everything from mechanics to the mental side of the game and some things that will help you improve your game overall as a QB. So fellas, the first thing I want to talk about is the grip of the football. Now, I'm not talking about where your hands go on the front of the laces. We've made some videos on that in the past, and like a lot of quarterbacks have a lot of different grips. I want to talk about the thumb placement when you are holding the ball to help with control. This is especially important for guys who are moving up in ball size. This is like a high school and college size ball. So if you're like a 7th grader or an 8th grader, you're moving up to this size football, this will help you, especially if you have smaller hands. So a lot of times when quarterbacks throw, when they go back with the ball, they have this really short backstroke, their elbows low, and they blame it on hand size. But I think a lot of times, like grip strength's obviously important. You need to have a strong grip. Doing anything for your grip, like those hand squeeze things, fingertip push-ups, hanging from a pull-up bar, anything that will make your grip stronger aids with this process. But a lot of times what QBs do is when they're gripping the ball, their thumb is too high. Like you see the white stripe on the football, it's almost like it's even with the white stripe, even a little bit higher than it sometimes, and it's very hard to get any type of control when you go back. It's almost like the ball is slipping as you go back with the football. So a good rule of thumb that will help you get your elbow up by getting a full backstroke, the perfect spot. I shouldn't say perfect spot because everybody's a little bit different, but you want to try to shoot for 90 degrees the best you can. It doesn't need to be a perfect 90. If you're a little bit lower, that's cool. You're a little bit higher than 90, that's fine, but we need a backstroke to get my elbow up so I can throw a little bit better of a spiral and be more consistent and also have more power on my throws. You want to have your thumb even with your middle finger. So like if you were to let go of the football, these two should touch. If it's too high, your middle finger and your thumb can't touch. So you should have it like slightly below the white stripe, even with your middle finger, because that will give you more control as you go back with the ball. That will allow you to get your elbow up, have more power, and be a little bit more accurate as a QB. Now guys, before we get into the next 7 tips for quarterbacks, if you are a QB or wide receiver watching this and you would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches, we are traveling out to 12 more cities across the entire US for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps this offseason, you guys. So if you check out that very first link in the description below, that's where you can get all the information. Our next camp is going to be in Columbia, South Carolina. That camp is completely sold out, but then we'll be heading out to Seattle, Washington, where we have available spots. We only got about 8 left there. And then we'll be coming out to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, where we have about 10 spots left remaining. Then after Oklahoma, we'll be coming out to Nashville, Tennessee, where same thing, we only have about 10 more spots left. Then we'll be coming out to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Austin, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, Denver, Colorado, Columbus, Ohio, Boston, Massachusetts, Salt Lake City, Utah, and finishing off our tour in Los Angeles, California this summer, you guys. So fellas, if you would like to sign up, go to that very first link in the description below. Like I said, a lot of our camps will sell out way far in advance. Like Columbus and Boston, those are almost completely booked, and those are all the way in June. And then the camps that I mentioned in the beginning of that list, they will sell out probably within the next week or so. So guys, our camps sell out because we limit spots. We limit spots so we can work with you individually. You're going to be in a group of maybe 12 to 18 athletes in your position group and your age group. We split things up. We take ages 9 and above, but we split everybody up by skill level and by age. So guys, if you want to get a spot, very first link in that description below. I work with every single athlete at the camp, so hope we can see you there. Now guys, tip number 2 has to do with your release points. So for a lot of quarterbacks that struggle to throw a good spiral, when they release the ball, generally, like everybody knows as a quarterback, you got to flick your wrist when you finish with the throw. But a lot of guys, when they do their flick, they almost have their palm facing upward when they release the ball. And that's generally why a lot of QBs have the ball spin like almost like sideways, kind of looks like a duck on deeper throws. It doesn't have as much velocity, it doesn't have as much finish, it's not as catchable of a football for a wide receiver. So a good rule of thumb, like me personally, when I throw the ball, and this isn't one size fits all, this isn't everybody, I think about turning my palm outwards and the top of my thumb straight down towards the ground. A lot of guys don't have as much success thinking about that. It actually comes out maybe even a little bit weirder. You just need to think either palm down, like you are shooting a basketball, or your palm is turning outward. But when you flick, you have to make sure you get to a position called extension. Extension is when your wrist, elbow, and shoulder are fully extended at the release point. That helps with accuracy, but again, if you are either down with your palm or out with your palm, that will ultimately help with spin. So if you want to throw a better spiral, make sure your palm is not facing up when you release it. Now fellas, before we get into throwing mechanics, our footwork, our base, our hips, our shoulders, I want to talk to you about the mental side of the game as a quarterback. More specifically, how you can read defenses as a quarterback. Like a high school quarterback, you need to be able to read defenses, especially if you're a guy that isn't like a crazy like physical specimen who's like 6'5", 200 pounds, can throw the hell out of the ball. How you can separate yourself from guys who pass that like eye test as a quarterback quarterback is having good decision making, and that comes from understanding what defenses are doing and understanding what offensive play concepts are trying to accomplish. So I'm going to give you an example. Every single quarterback needs to have something called a pre-snap process. So a pre-snap process is when you come up to the line, you shouldn't just snap the ball and then go. And you're not reading receivers, you are reading defenders. If a defender goes one way, that should open up a spot for a receiver running a specific route if your playbook is good. So let's say we have a play concept like double slants. I'm going to keep it really simple. Let's say the left side we have double slants, right side we have a slant, and then my slot is running a bubble screen. So I want to come to the line and identify the coverage because I can either work the left side or the right side. This is a quick game. I could pick either side. So if I come up to the line, let's say I see two high safeties. They're very wide. They're like outside the hash. And let's say I look to the corners and the corners are pressed up because this is your process. You should go safeties, corners, box. And by box, I mean like a 4-3, like the defensive line, the linebackers, right? So if I see two deep safeties, they're really wide. I look at the corners and the corners are pressed up outside leverage with their eyes on the number 2 receiver or on me, the quarterback. And then I look and I see 4 down linemen with 3 backers. So I'm thinking it's a 4-3 that looks a lot like cover 2, where the 2 safeties take the deep halves and the corners stay in the flats, right? So what I'm thinking is I'm not going to throw the slant bubble, because if I go to the slant bubble side, bubble's taken by the corner, outside linebacker drops and he's in the slant window. So I'm going to go to the double slant side. So bam, I'm reading the outside backer. He goes with the inside slot. I throw the outside receiver. The outside backer widens out. I throw the inside receiver. So you keep the read simple, but how we pick the side that we were throwing to was based on my pre-snap process and identifying the coverage. So guys, you have to have that pre-snap process if you want to be more successful with your reads and football IQ. So fellas, let's get into some mechanics. So tip number 4 for high school quarterbacks is going to be being in a base where you have 70% of your weight loaded onto your back leg and your head, knee, and foot are stacked on top of each other. So the perfect quarterback base is like this. It's a big skyscraper with your foot all the way up to your head and you're very light on your front foot. So there are a couple different reasons why we want to get to this base, but the first one, we're going to get into this later on in the video. The first one is if I have more weight onto my back leg, when I actually step to the target and release, I'm taking that 70 and transferring it to my front foot. That has a little bit to do with hip rotation, and we'll get to hip rotation in a second, but you need to make sure that your weight is back to have more power. It will also help with accuracy, and we'll get into that, but the first thing I need you to understand is 60 to 70% of your weight on your back leg, light on your front foot. Your shin should try to be straight. You don't want to be here with your knee past your toe because that can prevent hip rotation, but nice and stacked, nice and tall, light on that front foot. Now, tip number 5, you guys, is when you take a stride with your front foot, you want to try to stay in that stacked position for a split second. So what do I mean by that? A lot of quarterbacks, they get to this back leg position, but when they step to their receiver, all of their weight transfers at once, and that prevents you from getting to a position called dissociation, which helps quarterbacks increase something, or which dissociation helps quarterbacks create torque, and torque is how we get more velocity on the ball and how you guys take pressure off of your arm. So if my weight is back here and I push forward, I cannot rotate my shoulders and counter rotate from my front foot. Throwing a football mechanically sound is a lot like hitting a baseball. For you guys watching this who are baseball players, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're back here with the bat, pitcher throws a pitch, you step to the pitcher. Where does your bat stay? It stays back here and your weight stays back here. And then what do? You fire your hips and the bat trails behind, and that's something called torque. The bat speed. A lot of people talk about bat speed. I'm not a baseball expert, but a lot of people talk about that, and that helps you get more distance with your hits, right? Or more power off the bat, so you can get more base hits, etc., right? So again, I'm not a baseball guy, but that's generally the concept, and because a hitter is a rotational athlete, much like a quarterback. So you got to get in that mindset as a QB, because when your weight stays back here, I can counter rotate my shoulder. Only thing that's different is I'm separating my hands, whereas a baseball swing, I keep my hands on the bat. I'll even have my quarterback swing with a PVC pipe to work on this specific sequence. But when you step, you want to keep this knee straight, hip straight, foot under your armpit, so your shoulders can actually rotate back. Now the next part of the throw is going to be the hip rotation, and that's what we'll discuss next. Now fellas, let's talk about your hips, right? So this is tip number 6 for quarterbacks. So if your weight's back, obviously like how we should be, 70-30, you stride, you keep your weight back, that will allow your shoulders to rotate back. Now the goal position is at the release point. You want your back hip to be ahead of your elbow and the football. That's torque, okay? That's the ultimate spot that we want to get to. Now, a lot of QBs struggle with that spot. They get their weight back, they rotate their shoulders, but their back foot might do this Their back foot might kick behind. All I want you guys to think about is that you are pivoting or squishing a bug with your back big toe, and your front hip is opening, not just driving your back hip. Because a lot of guys, what they'll do is they'll drive their back hip, but they still don't rotate enough. You got to think somebody is pulling your front hip and you are pivoting off of this back big toe. Some QBs like to leave their back foot here when they throw. That's fine. A little unrealistic when you're having to move around. So I don't necessarily teach quarterbacks that. I teach them a drag. A lot of QBs, when they step, I like it personally if you're pivoting off of this big toe, but when you open your front hip, this foot drags through. The goal is to get your hips to rotate before your shoulders. That is what takes pressure off your arm. That is what helps you with more velocity and distance. And again, that is the definition of torque. Now, tip number 7 for quarterbacks, you guys, is having a good posture when you are having to move around. A lot of QBs miss very high when they have to step up in the pocket, move to the left, move to the right, because maybe their core isn't that strong, maybe they have poor hip mobility, or maybe it's just a bad habit that they have. We just had a camp in Arizona and a lot of QBs were struggling with this. They would drop back and we were doing a pocket movement throw where they had to step up in the pocket and then drift back door. So a lot of QBs would step up in the pocket, then they get super low. If I have to throw from this position, I'm probably not going to rotate like this. So what happens is when I get low and I start to throw, I need to pop up. But when your head changes levels, that's what makes the ball shoot high. So I was telling all the quarterbacks, focus on having a big chest. Don't pull your shoulders back and be super tense, but have a big chest and be relaxed. And when you step up, maintain that big chest. So if I need to throw from this position, I can just rotate through and throw. And it sets up the throwing sequence that we just talked about. So guys, you need good posture. That is something you should definitely emphasize anytime you're doing pocket movement, throwing off the drops, or even just playing catch. Now guys, tip number 8 for quarterbacks is going to have to do with dealing with pressure. So everybody knows, at least I don't think there's really an argument for it. A lot of people go back and forth with me on this type of stuff, but I think quarterback is the hardest position in all of sports, not just football, in all of sports, because of the stuff that we have to deal with. We have to be able to throw an accurate pass. We have literally flying bullets in terms of a defensive line trying to take my head off every single play. I have to read the coverage. I have to throw the ball on time. Sometimes I got to stand in there and throw while I'm getting hit. Well, everybody on the field puts all the blame on you if things don't go well. Obviously, you get a lot of praise when things do go well, but a lot of the blame is put on your shoulders. So a lot of QBs struggle with dealing with that type of pressure. And the biggest thing that I could get across to you guys is to not focus on the moment as a whole. Focus on taking things one rep and one play at a time. That's what I do personally, like in my daily life. Like, I'm very hard on myself. So like, for example, if like I'm not hitting a certain goal, like if, you know, like maybe a video doesn't get a lot of views or something like that, like I'm not the biggest like the guy who cares about views. I generally just want to put out good information. But let's use that as an example, right? Like, let's say this YouTube video, my goal is to have it hit a certain amount of views, and like it doesn't hit that amount, right? That's a bad thing that happened. I put a lot of pressure on myself to hit a certain goal. So the next time that I'm filming a YouTube video, I'm not thinking about all that pressure. I'm not like, man, I got to hit this many views. I got to hit 5,000 views or 2,000 views or whatever. I'm not thinking about that. What I'm thinking about is just being in the present moment. What is my job? What is my job on this specific clip? To tell you guys as good of information as I possibly can. That's how you should honestly approach the game as a quarterback. You shouldn't be in a game thinking about, man, I got all this pressure. People are relying on me. Like, you know, what if the line doesn't block? What if no, just do your job. And your job as a quarterback is very, very simple on every single play. It's complex, but you want to simplify it. You want to simplify it to where, okay, what's my job on this play? Make the right read, accurate route. In a live game scenario, you can't think about your mechanics. You can't think about your posture. You can't think about that type of stuff. It's impossible, you guys. That is training. When you're training on a field just like this, no defense, no pass rush, yeah, you're focused on that type of stuff. You're hyper focused on that type of stuff. But in a game, it's just about being accurate with the ball and making the right read, throwing the ball on time. If it's a run play, your job is to hand the ball off perfectly and carry out your fake. That's it. So that's all you should be worried on. And if the play doesn't go your way, you go to the sideline, learn from the mistake. Okay, when you get back on the field, you're not even thinking about it. You're just focused on your job in the present moment, and that will help you quiet your mind. You read any type of like self-help book or any type of like book about like, you know, like people dealing with like anxiety or people dealing with stress and stuff like that. The number one thing that every single author across the world who writes about that stuff talks about is staying in the present moment. So if you're stressed, they just say like, hey, don't worry about the past, don't worry about the future, just be where your 2 feet land. That's how you should think about it as a quarterback. Where are my 2 feet? I'm in a game. I'm focused on reading the outside backer. We have double slants. I'm just gonna roll. That's all you should be worried about, and guys, it will help you deal with the pressure of this position better. If you struggle dealing with pressure and you don't do that, it's gonna be a very rocky road for you as a quarterback, but until you understand that and you actually apply that in practice, when you're training, when you're doing 7-on-7, you will become much better above the neck, which is honestly, like at a certain point, probably 80% of the position.